I often say a lot of parents parent according to the sleeping dog philosophy. If the dog is quiet, you leave it alone. No. If the child is playing nicely with his sibling or sibling, whatever, or doing something nice and so on, maybe coloring quietly and so on, that's the parent can, not that you disturb the whole thing, but you can come up and you can rub his head or pat him on the back, say, "Oh, Billy or Susie, I like the way you're playing with your brother or your sister so quietly, and you're sharing this. It makes me very happy." Okay, so you've been specific about what the child is doing, and then you walk away, and the kids go, "Oh, that's pretty nice." And in fact, maybe you might even say, and when you're finished playing, maybe we'll go bake some brownies or something like that, which you were planning to do anyhow. But now you're going to do this fun task based on the fact that the kids are playing nicely. So by catching the kids while they're good and so on, that's the kind of that you're going to get more of that behavior.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Mediocre Dads podcast, where being mediocre is a choice. You have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I'm your host, Queon. I go by Q. And on this episode of Mediocre Dads, I'm joined by a very special guest named Dr. Larry Waldman. I was telling him beforehand, guys, that I get excited when I get to actually talk to someone, not only like parents. I love talking to parents, but when I get to talk to someone who is, trained in the art of the mind, if you will, and how to utilize those techniques. And they're not only in to help you all and help us, but also to help themselves in a lot of different ways. And so to get a chance to really dig into their mind and how their perspective and how they see things, especially for us parents who can be overcritical at times of ourselves, I think it's very helpful to kind of really, really go back to that balance and say, like, okay, I'm not doing as bad as I think I am, And so without further ado, Dr. Waldman, can you kind of briefly explain your upbringing and what led you to getting into the space that you got into? Because, I think a lot of people, they'll sit there and be like, "Oh, did you get into this to doing this because, there was money involved or whatever, or was there an underlying passion there your entire life that you said, this is what I want to do, this is what I was put on this earth to do"?
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm a little taken aback by asking me to talk about my upbringing, but I was probably a problem child, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I was reasonably bright, and I learned early on that I had the power to manipulate my naive mother and father, and even some of my teachers. And truth of the matter is, bright children tend to do that. They recognize that they're bright and that they have control, particularly if the parents feed it to them, and they manipulate. And I did. Then along came my three sisters after me, and I actually, looking back, was jealous, particularly of the one right after me, about 2.5 years later, and that didn't help either. And then when I started school, of course, my teachers were young females, very much like my mother, and lo and behold, the same factors worked. I could be the class clown and get the kids to laugh at me and actually get the teacher's attention as well. And so I was a bit of a problem. No, I never did anything horrible other than being a goofball and getting a lot of attention for misbehavior. Back in high school, I remember thinking that I wanted to be at first I was thinking about being a doctor, a medical doctor. But I did some reading and so forth, and I thought, I think I'm going to like to be a psychologist. And so I majored in education and psychology at the University of Wisconsin during the 60s, if you will, and so on. And then started my graduate training in 1970. And I was fortunate enough to meet my mentor, who unfortunately has now passed. But he was the director of the Special Development Clinic, which was part of Milwaukee Children's Hospital. And he took me under his arm and so forth and trained me particularly in behavioral therapy. And we worked with kids who were brought into the hospital for medical reasons and psychological reasons. And we saw kids with significant issues, bipolar, autistic, behavior disorder, and so on. And it was our job to fix them, if you will. Excuse me. And we did, often without the use of medication, sometimes by using what we refer to as strict behavioral methods. This was an eye-opener for me. It taught me that by managing the child's environment, not like in jail, but
Yeah.
we'll get to those what I'm talking about. But by carefully managing the environment, you can actually manage the children's behavior. And I got married 53 years ago. We've
awesome.
had our two sons. And now, again, they weren't perfect, but they've grown up to be very independent, resourceful, responsible. They don't rely on me for money, and so on. And they do a nice job as as husbands and as fathers. I'm proud of. So again, raising a human being is one of the most important duties that adults have.
Yeah.
And as I was saying to you before we went on the air, it always surprises me that people go into that with little or no training, none at all. Most parents, unfortunately, are just parenting by the seat of their pants, as I like to say, with little training, no idea what they're doing. One day doesn't connect to the next day. A lot of it depends on how much sleep they've had or what's going on in their life and so on. And it's entropy or chaos, if you will. And that's not a way to raise a healthy, independent, responsible, resilient young person. And that's of course our goal, right? And that I had that in my head all the time as I was working or living with my sons. Many times I'd ask myself, as we're dealing with life and so forth, is this moving in the direction that I wanted to move? Is this going to help him learn to become independent, responsible, resilient, and so forth? And, now, theoretically, there really are a number of different choices parents can make. Most parents, unless you get a PhD, I guess, in this field, don't realize that there are four major schools of thought in psychology. And obviously, as a student of psychology, if you will, I'm well versed in the four different schools. But what I'm totally convinced with is that with respect to parenting, the behavioral school is the one that I think is best utilized in this arena of parenting. Now, what the behavioral school basically argues is that who and what we become is a function of the consequences of our behaviors. Okay? And so, as I said earlier, what we did at the hospital way back when is that therefore by managing the child's environment, you manage then the consequences to those behaviors. And that's what I believe good parents do. Now, keep it simple. It's a matter of asking some important questions. What's the most important thing we parents can give to our kids?
Well,
Take a
I think
stab at that.
yeah, I definitely will take a stab at that. I think it really depends their age. Well, I lied. You know what? I won't. It's not their age. I won't say necessarily their age, but I will say is because it's throughout their life, it will change over time. My answer, and you'll understand. I know when I give my answer, but I think the most important thing we can give our kids is time. I mean, what I mean by time is our time. So,
Yep. But that was fast. Usually I have to milk it to get people to come to the right answer. Yeah, absolutely. You're right on. Uh, you're frozen right now, actually.
oh, am I?
Okay. Yeah.
There we
Okay.
go.
I can hear you. You're exactly right. Uh, it, it it's the parents' undivided individual time. Now, you can call it love, you can call it discipline, you can call it whatever you want. But to the child, what it looks like is a interested, concerned parent is providing their individual time. And that's the bottom line. Okay? And if parents understand that, we're moving ahead. Now, here's the second important question. If we agree that providing individual time to our kids is extremely important, most important, when do we provide it? Under
Well,
what circumstances do we give this valuable commodity to our kids?
I think it's very hard, right? And I say that because as fathers, the responsibility to provide and to take care of their family is put on us, and so you have to balance. It's a balancing act of okay, I have to go to work, and then I come back home from work, and depending what you do, you're very tired, but still you need to give your time. You still need to be a father, and then you still need to be a husband, and so balancing that time is very difficult. But I think with the best, one of the greatest things is if you have two parents who are committed to loving each other and loving their children, the moms, especially if they're stay-at-home moms or if they're stay-at-home dads, whatever the case might be, whoever is that stay-at-home parent, if that's how you decide to run your family, is the person who is responsible, truthfully, to provide that love and that time to show, hey, dad might not be here right now, or mom might not be here right now, but while I'm here, I'm going to give you the attention and affection that you need to show you, and just so you can see, like, oh, my parents do love me. So when dad does come home from work, for example, myself, when I do come home from work, my kids are beyond ecstatic to see me. And rather than, in most times, and some regards, I would want to come upstairs and decompress, because it's a stressful day, because I've been up since 5 o'clock in the morning. It's like, hey, I can sit here and gripe and complain, or I can sit and say I need to decompress, or I can be like, hey, you know what? That hour that I just took home or drive home, that was the time I took to decompress. I'm home now. It's time to put on dad mode, be a dad. Time to put on husband mode, be a husband. Take that time, whatever, how time which we have, and then do it all over again tomorrow. And then that Saturday and Sunday, those are the days in which, hey, I have all day to give to you, right? Now, our kids don't, let's be honest, our kids don't want to spend all day with us, especially as they get older. But still, those are the times really where on the weekends or whenever your weekend is that we can really dedicate that time to them. So it's a balancing act. And I think a lot of people don't understand. They think they're like, if I'm not giving you it all, then it's like, I'm not giving you nothing. Well, it's like, no, it's a balancing act. So.
Well, your answer is right on. Yes, I mean life gets in the way, no question. We have other things to do than just interact with our kids. No question about that. But here's the rub here, you see, and I'll take that example that you gave because it fits. It's right on. Dad comes home from a long day at work, or mom too. Doesn't make any difference. The parent comes home from work and so on, and it would love just to go into their room and decompress or take a hot bath or whatever. Of course, the kids are excited to see their parent and so on, and then they start running up to them, whatever, and the parent goes, tries momentally try to shoo them away or whatever, and next thing you know, the kid is doing something that you don't want them to do, and now what are you doing as a parent?
Very reactionary.
You're reacting to the inappropriate behavior, and what are you now giving that child?
Giving attention, but I would say it's not the attention that they were looking for, and so it turns into...
It's not the attention, sorry, I didn't catch it.
It's not the attention they were looking for, meaning if I get upset...
wait a minute. Let me dispute that a little bit, okay?
Okay.
In the parent's mind, it's not the attention they were looking for. The truth is, the child doesn't know any difference. The old adage that, bad publicity is better than no publicity at all for celebrities? Well, guess what? Bad attention, negative attention is better than no attention for kids. And remember, they haven't read any books on parenting. They don't know what's supposed to be, what's good or bad or indifferent. As far as they're concerned, this is the way the game is played. We agree that kids need attention and want attention, and they're going to get it any way they can. It's up to the parent to decide what kind of attention they're going to get. And what happens, unfortunately, in most homes is that we're operating on what I call a negative attention cycle. Right? Mm-hmm. And that the kid is getting most, if not all, most of their valuable parental attention immediately following bad behavior.
Yes.
So in the case that you gave, and you handled it right, you sucked it up, and you spent some time, quality time, positive time with your kids, upon coming home, and the kids recognize, okay, this is what happened. Dad comes home and we get quality time. Now, after that, then you might say, all right, daddy's tired. I need, 15 minutes to shower or whatever, and that'll work. Right? But this is what I'm basically talking about. This is the nub of the issue here, is when do parents generally provide attention to the kids? And if you leave it to the winds, if you will, what is going to happen, as I did it when I was a youngster, I realized, okay, I got most of my mom's attention by misbehaving, by doing things I wasn't supposed to do, or teasing my sister. My sister would, and my mom would come running and so on. And I'm thinking, this isn't bad. Look at this. I got my sister screaming and my mother, I'm king around here. That's the way it works if you allow it. Okay. So we have to recognize that it is our responsibility as parents to teach our kids that, yes, we love you. You deserve my time and attention. You're going to get that time and attention when you behave appropriately. Right? I like to say, and I've said it hundreds of times, my kids manipulated me all through their childhood. They behaved appropriately, and I attended to them. And see, they didn't know what I was doing, and so on. They didn't know that I was manipulating them, if you will, but I was manipulating them in a good way and teaching them, skills that will help them through life. Frankly, learning to misbehave to get attention is not a skill that serves you well as you become older, as you become an adult.
Yeah.
Learning to be responsible and independent and so on, those are the skills that make one more productive as an adult and so on. And supervisors and so forth and bosses like that. Okay. And so that's what happens. And that's what
Well,
parents need to understand. I like to keep it simple. Catch them while they're good.
yeah. Well, okay. I got a question then, though, because and you even said it in the beginning, and that is, we're not given a handbook on how to be parents, right? And so a lot of parents are winging it. And there are several books and guides out there that telling you this is how to be an effective parent. This is how to be a good dad. This is how to be a good mom or whatever. And don't get me wrong, they have some good tools to put in your toolbox, if you will, to utilize them and put into practice. However, it's really easy to read something and say, okay, the book says if my child's throwing a temper tantrum, I need to feed into the emotional response, but then I also need to teach them at the same time, hey, I don't know, you knocked over a glass vase that was full of flowers, and there are consequences to that, but also you don't understand what you did, so I need to fit that emotional side. So as people who have never had to do that before, and you're doing it to a small child who at their emotional capacity is seems unlimited, just to cry all day if they really wanted to, it's very difficult to do that. So like, what would you suggest to parents, that new parents especially, since there is no toolkit, right?
Well, yes, no, there is not a toolkit per se, but what I'm talking about is at least a plan, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
a basic scheme.
Gotcha.
And thus far I promoted here and this is the most important part, is to catch them when they're good. Most parents are on the lookout for bad behavior when they should be looking for good behavior. And
I love
so
that.
if we start teaching the child that it pays off to be good, you're going to get more of that. Your child is going to do whatever provides them with the most attention, good or bad, like it or not. That's the way it is. It's up to you to decide how, when you dispense that attention. So if you're catching the kid being good, then you respond to it. I often say a lot of parents parent according to the sleeping dog philosophy. If the dog is quiet, you leave it alone. No, no, no. If the child is playing nicely with his sibling or sibling, whatever, or doing something nice and so on, maybe coloring quietly and so on, that's the parent can, not that you disturb the whole thing, but you can come up and you can rub his head or pat him on the back and say, "Oh, Billy or Susie, I like the way you're playing with your brother or your sister so quietly, and you're sharing. That's it makes me very happy." Okay. So you've been specific about what the child is doing, and then you walk away. And the kid's going, "Oh, that's pretty nice." And in fact, maybe you might even say, and when you're finished playing, maybe we'll go bake some brownies or something like that, which you were planning to do anyhow. But now you're going to do this fun task based on the fact that the kids are playing nicely. So by catching the kids while they're good and so on, that's the kind of that you're going to get more of that behavior. All right. Now, most parents, of course, are interested in what you were talking about. In fact, I did this for decades in my office. Child psychology was one of my niches, of course. So most of the time, even though I was doing child psychology, the people I was sitting in front of wasn't the 5-year-old. I'm not sitting across from a 5-year-old and saying, "Billy, do you realize that a lot of your behavior is inappropriate?" What's inappropriate? No, I'm sitting across from the parents. Okay. And their concern 9 times out of 10 was, how do I stop this bad behavior? Well, see, that's the wrong focus. The first thing to think about is not to worry about stopping the bad behavior, is to start the good behavior. Right? And we start the good behavior by reinforcing, catching them when they're good, by responding immediately to the good behavior in a specific way. It's not good job, wow, nice, okay, love you. I mean, all of those are nice. I call them compliments, but they're not reinforcement. To say, gee, Billy, I like the way you did whatever it is. Okay. Look how neat you made your bed. You tucked in the corners. You put the pillow on top. Good job. You're a good bed maker. Okay. Now the kid knows exactly what he did. Okay. And importantly, can now repeat it. Why do we reinforce our kids? We want to praise them for the good behavior, but we want them to continue to do it. If we don't teach them what it is they did to get that good behavior, how are they supposed to repeat? Okay. So we're very specific with that. All right. So again, key number one, catch them when they're good. Reinforce them specifically when doing so. All right. All right. Now we can look at the other side of the coin. All right. Yes, there are going to be times when there is bad behavior. Now, research has shown pretty clearly that 80 to 90% of the time that kids misbehave, okay, is like whining, complaining, procrastinating, things of that nature. Why are they doing that? Well, I think you know the answer now. Why do they do that? Is because it gets a response. I mean, I've seen it many times, frankly, even at my kid's house sometimes, and so on. Yep. The boss is here. the the they want to get the kids ready to go to school and so on, and the kids are procrastinating and so on, and before long, the parents getting almost hysterical, if you will, and finally they're sitting there putting the kids' shoes on, and the kids are totally scared, and the kids sitting there, okay, put my shoes on, and I'm watching this whole thing and not saying a word. Now, no, okay. So what's happened here is the kid has done a masterful job of manipulating his parents. Now, what my kids, of course, learned, right? And it didn't have, and I didn't have happen. Didn't have to happen many times. My kids tried that, of course, to procrastinate, like before we would go somewhere and so on. Thinking that, oh, dad's going to fall for this, and he's going to start yelling and pushing, and trying to get, and then he's going to get crazy and put my shoes on for me, even though I'm more than capable of doing it, and so on. But unfortunately for them, what they learned was, and I would say, all right, I'd give them a timeline, 10 minutes before we have to leave, and I would show them on the clock, 10 minutes before we have to leave, 5 minutes, and so forth. And then I'd walk into the room, and maybe they'd be there with a pair of shorts on, but no shirt, no shoes, and socks. And I said, it's time to go. And they'd say, well, I'm not dressed. I would grab their shoes, their socks, their shirt, take them by the hand, walk them out, place them in the car, leave their shoes and so forth on their lap, and take them to school. And they realized I would drop them off at school with a pair of shorts and so forth and so on, and say, have a nice day.
I love that.
That's what's called a logical consequence. The logical consequence to that inappropriate behavior is that I'm not yelling and screaming. I'm not going to allow them to manipulate me in a negative kind of way. So that's the notion, you see. Is that we are controlling how it is that we are going to react. Okay?
Well, I think it's. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I think I totally agree because I've told my wife this before. I said, our kids, they're trying to manipulate us. And she was like, she goes, no, they're not trying to manipulate us. She goes, and she wouldn't believe me. And I said, no, I said, understand, right? I said, you and I understand what the word manipulation means and how to utilize that and what manipulating looks like from an adult perspective, our experiences in life. I said, however, kids don't know, they may not know the definition of manipulation, but they do understand responses and reactions. They do understand, like you said, hey, if dad's talking on the phone, he's already told me not to interrupt me when he interrupt phone, but if he only gives me the attention that I've been looking for all day when he's talking on the phone and I interrupt him, well, guess what? I'm going to interrupt him on the phone. And the manipulation is I'm getting the reaction or I'm getting the thing that I want, which is the attention. So therefore, I'm going to keep doing it because it's getting me what I want. Now, I may get yelled at, whatever, but in the back of my mind is like, this is the only time in which he gives me the attention that I'm looking for. And so I told my wife, I tried to explain this to my wife. I was like, this is what manipulation for kids looks like. And I was like, it's not necessarily them trying to be malicious with their intent there. I said, but their intent is to get their attention, and they're going to do anything they can and they want to get that attention because kids are driven by their feelings and by their emotions a lot of times, right? Again, because they're young, and one of their biggest things is, Mom, Dad, look at me. Look at what I'm doing. Look, I can do this cool thing. Look, Mom, see, I'm over here. Like, and they just want your attention. They want that validation. That's what they're seeking. And that's what I try to explain to my wife. It didn't come off that way because I didn't have the intellect to describe it the way that you have done here. But once we're done here, I'm telling you, I'm going to go talk to my wife. I'm like, hey, I got this. I was just talking to this guy, and I got some ideas on what we can do. Because she homeschools our daughters. Well, my oldest, my youngest, she's only 2, so she's not actually being homeschooled. But my oldest, and I told my wife, and sometimes I'll come home. I say, hey, how's your day? What was going on? And she'll be like, you tell she was upset and very just patience, and she's pregnant with our third, so I get it, And so I was like, and she'll tell me all the bad things, and I said, well, hey, tell me 3 good things that she did good today. And I could see it kind of stumps her for a second. Well, she's like, well, and it's like, hey, I said, I love you. And I said, I'm not trying to attack you as a mother. I think you're doing a phenomenal job as a mother. I said, but, sometimes we can really hyperfixate on the bad versus the good that they've done. And so when we do that, all we pay attention to and all we look for, like you said, is the bad things that they're doing versus the good things. And I was like, I guarantee you she's done more than three good things today. I said, but you didn't pay attention to it because all you were looking for was when she was doing something bad. Like you said, the dog analogy, right? If they're quiet, hey, that means, hey, out of sight, out of mind, they'll leave me alone, I'll leave them alone. And so I really love that, right? I really love that aspect because I think it's good for parents to hear that, and especially from someone with your experience and with your background, because it reinforces like, okay, all right, gosh, I know what I need to do to get back online, get back on track, right? Because again, as you stated, time is the most precious thing with our kids. And before you know it, it all happens in a blink of an eye. And they're 18, 19 years old, moving on to bigger and better things within their life. And you're like, did I do everything I was supposed to? Did I thought I had more time with them, and now they're ready to leave. And it's like, wait, there's so much I need to tell you. There's so much I missed. I need to express to you to prepare you for what's going to happen when you leave here and you no longer have my direct protection, and it makes you nervous. And so I try to stress to parents like, hey, your kids in the beginning years, those are the most important years of their life, right? Love them, care for them, teach them, mentor them, do everything you need to at that young point. Have fun, of course, because remember, they're still kids, but also that time where you just hang out with them, believe it or not, they're learning a lot more than you think. By you just sitting there playing Barbies, I play Barbies with my daughter all the time, and by me just sitting there, I can see that she's learning so much more from me in that moment of what presence is, how to be kind, how to be respectful, how to be considerate in that moment versus me trying to give her a life lesson of, hey, this is what respect looks like, when she's only 6, right? So I love that. I love that, doctor. I think that's phenomenal. So I did have a question though for you. For your kids, you're a psychologist. You've been in this sphere for a long time. So was it ever intimidating for your kids to be like, oh, okay, you're just gonna like psychoanalyze me and you're gonna break it down of like what I'm doing, or was that kind of like a thing they never really thought of?
I loved what you just said. In fact, I want to make a comment on it. But to answer
Absolutely.
the last question, sure. Not early on, of course, but
Mhm.
later on when they became teenagers and such and so on, I would still do my thing. And my older son in particular would say, Dad, would you stop with the psych stuff? The phone issue is really interesting because I've had many parents complain and say, why do they act up, when I'm on the phone? And I've done this probably 25 times. I did in my office. And I'd say, watch this. The phone rings. Yeah, hi, hello. Oh, good. I'm glad you called. Uh-huh, uh-huh. And now the kids start, and then the parent, uh-huh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, think about that, okay? You're 5 and you've got your parent going, you know, find out, hell yeah. Look at the control. I mean, what if you were in their position and you could make your parent do that, act like a doofus, trying to carry on one conversation by telling, come on, that's entertainment. That's
Yeah.
power. That's control. And the parents don't realize that they're getting their skivvies manipulated off of them because the kid this is a fun thing. Your comment that you made also here about living with them, 90% of what our kids learn from us, okay, is indirect. Okay. We like to sit down sometimes and try to instruct them, and have that conversation. Okay, you can do that. But I'll tell you the truth. The truth is we are their primary teachers, and they're learning from us minute by minute. And how you interact with your wife and she with you while life is going on, that is the major teacher. Okay. And that's where the kids learn what it means to be a husband and or a father or a wife or a mother. Okay. Because they see that, going on day in and day out. Okay. And how you react to these certain situations and so forth, that's the real teacher. Okay. And
Mhm.
and they're watching this and so on. And that's where they learn it and so on. Yes, you can sit down and try to teach them a lesson, and occasionally, yes, that's okay. But the primary education is what goes on a day-to-day basis. Now, another point you made, and a good one, is as they get older, they get to be a teenager. Well, the situation now actually starts to change. This young child that, it craves our attention. And like you said, look, mommy, look what I did. Look, you see that all the time. Look what I did. All right. Now, have you ever seen an 18-year-old go, hey, mom, look what I did? No,
Mm-mm.
they don't care anymore. All right.
It's
Yeah, excuse me. So you see, it changes now. They're not, yes, they'd like you to say you're proud of them and things like that, but they no longer crave that parental attention. In fact, as far as they're concerned, they would rather be with their buddies than hang out with you. Okay. So the job needs to get done, in the first decade or so, or decade and a half for sure, and so on. Yeah, I remember I had this happen so many times. A couple would come in and I'd say, well, what brings you on? And they would say, well, our son's a senior in high school. He's going to turn 18 here in a couple of months, and we don't like what's going on, and we'd like you to fix it. And I would go, sorry, that horse already left the barn.
Yeah.
It's a little late here. I mean, we can do what we can, but why did you wait so long? You see, managing, of course, adolescence, is far different. I mean, I remember, and gosh, I hadn't thought of this in decades, but my older son, he was driving. I think he was like a senior in high school or whatever. And he had his own car because he was in sports and he was going to all these things and so on. Mm-hmm. But we had a rule. Okay? We had a rule to decrease our liability and so forth, that he had only one other passenger in the car when he was driving. Mm-hmm. That was our rule. All right. So anyone, all right. So one day I'm coming home from work and I'm coming down one of the main streets leading to our house, and I look up ahead and I see my son's car. All right. Mm-hmm. So I pull up next to him at the stoplight, and I look, and he's got two kids sitting in the front seat, one on the lap, and four kids sitting in the back seat. And I rolled down the window, and he saw me, and he had a look on his face like, oh my God, I'm caught. And I said, home. And so he followed me home, and I went into the garage and came out with the steering wheel lock. And as the kids were getting out of the car, I put the steering wheel lock on his steering wheel. And I said, you knew the rule. You broke it. See, I'm not going crazy. You broke it. This is staying here for a week. And he said, but Dad, what am I going to do with all these kids? And I said, you know something? That's not my problem. And I walked into the house.
That's amazing. I love that. I think it's hard for parents to stick to their guns. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of parents will be like, they'll end up caving. Kid asks for ice cream at night, and you said, hey, it's bedtime. Kid is throwing a temper tantrum, and then after a while, and I say this, and everything I say, like literally, this is personal experiences. This is what Queon has done or is doing, and I'm fully able to recognize that. And it is. Kids ask for ice cream, and you're like, no, it's too late. It's too late for ice cream. They're throwing a fit. They're upset. And then you think back to when you were a kid and when you would have loved to have that ice cream. And so you're like, all right, you cave in, you give them ice cream. But now they know tomorrow night I can do the same thing, and I'm going to get the ice cream that I want. And when you don't get it, the temper tantrum is worse. The next day it's worse because they're like, hey, last time I did this, I got what I want, and I want to get what I want. And so and that leads me into my final question, and I think you'd be a perfect person to ask this question to, is there's been a real big push for this gentle parenting and this idea of, we have to, we want to be able to emotionally respond to our kids' emotions. And don't get me wrong, I understand that the thought process behind that, but I don't think that gentle parenting is overall effective in the sense of in the long term, right? And I say that because so many kids, you see it over after a while, is like these kids have turned into the manipulation game where they are now walking all over their parents. And the title of your book that I saw, the one that stuck out to me, is Who's Raising Who? I think, was it called Who's Raising You? I think that's what it's called. Was it called that? I don't want to lie to you.
Who's raising
whom? Yeah, there we go. Who's raising whom? It stuck out to me because so many times I can see if I'm taking my girls to the park, right? And I'm, whatever the case would be, having fun, I can see these other kids, right, from the outside looking in, of course. I can see these kids essentially directing the orchestra, which is their parents. They said, hey, I want to jump from this high part of the playground. They're like, no, don't jump from this high part of the playground. So, well, I'm going to jump. So either you come over here and catch me, or you watch me fall and hurt myself and deal with consequences that way. But either way, I'm jumping, right? And so they'll run over there and they're like, okay, hey, be careful. But then for me, my daughter she'll try to do that because she sees that, and I'll be like, I'll sit there and I'll be like, hey, if you jump from there, I'm just gonna tell you right now, you're probably gonna hurt yourself. I said, however, if you jump correctly and you land, you might land correctly. I said, you might not hurt yourself the first or the second time, but I said, you are not prepared to jump from that height yet because you don't understand the depth of how high you're jumping from. But I said, I'm not coming over there. So if you jump, that's on you. And sure enough, they try it once. But the second time, they start second guessing themselves like, well, that really didn't feel good the first time. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing that. So I guess what is your thought process on gentle parenting? And it's not to attack gentle parenting per se, but just to kind of, do you think it's an effective method that parents are utilizing today?
Well, as you can tell from what I've been talking about, my focus is not on emotions because those are hard to read. My focus is on behavior.
Yes.
So I'm looking at behavior. Right? I think if parents are starting to worry about what the kid might be feeling and what they're thinking, who knows? I'm focused on the behavior. Again, the example you just gave, if my kid said, I want to jump off or whatever, I would say, I don't recommend that, but that could hurt yourself. And in fact, if you try it, we will be going home.
Yep.
Now, my kids learned, by the way, that whenever I said something like that, if A, then B, it's not if A, maybe B, could be B, sometimes it's B. No. If I said it, it happened. And see, unfortunately for a lot of parents, they prevaricate. Sometimes they say, well, if you do that, we're going to do this. But then that happens, and then it doesn't occur. And the kid goes, they're just blowing smoke. See, I didn't have to nag my kids or whatever, because if I said, if this happens, this will occur, take it to the bank, bud, because it did.
I love that
just
because my parents did that. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. My parents did that to me.
No, that's
and I
fine.
totally get it.
You said one other thing, and I love this example, and I give it all the time. Okay, and you did a nice job. But another good example is Timmy 6. It comes into the kitchen. It's 5:00. Mom's preparing dinner, right? And Timmy says, "Mommy, I'm hungry. I want a cookie." Okay. So what does mom say?
No, I'm making dinner Timmy, right now.
We're going to have dinner in a half an hour. You can't have a cookie now. It'll spoil your appetite. If you have a good dinner, you can have a cookie for dessert. Okay. Very nice. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. And so, of course, Timmy goes, all right. No, that isn't what happens. Okay. What does Timmy say? But mommy, I want a cookie. Right. So what does mom do? Well, she now repeats herself like he's deaf. Again, the same argument that she made before, which is a good one, but now it's the second time. So now the kid's got her repeating herself again. And again, does Timmy say, well, all right. No, third time, I want a cookie. Now mom's getting very frustrated. She said, look, now she's getting her voice is raised. See, and now now the kid's going, oh, this is pretty good. I'm getting her attention. I'm getting her worked up, and so on. I want a cookie. Third time. And she, look, I told you, no cookie right now. And then he's you can see, ready to have a tantrum, or it looks like he's about to. I want a cookie. And finally, mother says, all right, here, take your darn cookie and get out of the kitchen. And she hands him a cookie. Now, here's the question. What did Timmy learn?
If I push hard enough, I'll get what I want.
Exactly. Right. Now, the mother, the following morning, is having a conversation with the neighbor across the fence, saying, God, my kid is so stubborn, like it was innate, like he was born with it. No, I'm sorry, Mom, but you taught him to be negatively persistent. Okay, that's not a good skill. Timmy knows that if he asks enough times, sooner or later, he's going to get what he wants. Casinos figured this out a long, long time ago. People are going to spend lots of money. They're going to throw lots of money into the machine before they get a few bucks back and stay there until all their money's gone. Well, the same thing works at home. Okay. So my kids learned that if they asked me something and I said no, and they asked it again, I did this. I turned my head. The discussion was done, over, through, forget about it. I'm not providing any more attention to that nagging behavior. It's not the kind of behavior that's worth my time. So you see, what we're doing here is a push-pull effect. I'm reinforcing, I'm giving attention when I see the good behavior, and I'm withdrawing it when I see the bad. And with that process over time, the kid learns, hey, I'm not going to mess with him or her, and so on. And they of course adapt to the environment, and they're behaving appropriately, and things are lovely, and so. And I wish more parents would learn that. It's not easy many times, but if you have that, again, as I said, I'm trying to send out the plan. If you have that overall scheme in your head, catch them when they're good and not, and withdraw when they're bad. Theoretically, it's pretty simple. Yes, to put in place, much harder, but believe me, it works. And what's more important is we end up raising independent, responsible, resilient kids.
I think I mean, it's so spot on, and I love this entire conversation because, again, for me, it reinforces some of my beliefs and my understandings of how to raise kids. It just I wasn't sure of like, well, okay, I don't hear or see other parents doing this, so I'm hesitant. I'm like, am I doing it the right thing or raising my kids the right way, or am I just trying to apply an older mentality, if you will, to something that is totally nuanced and changed? And so for me, it makes me feel better, and I think for the parents out there who are similar to me and my age in that regards are like, cool, we're on the right track. Before we go and get off here, Dr. Waldman, is there anything, well, first and foremost, where can people find you, right? Where can people go to find more information on you? If they want to maybe get into your coaching, where could they go? Because I think you have a lot of good insight, and I think a lot of people would want to know more.
Well, my website is topphoenixpsychologist.com. There's a lot of information there. I probably have 30 to 40 articles. My books are listed there and so on. And so that would be a good place to start. I'll give you my email address. My email address is LFW. Those are my initials at LarryWaldmanPhD.com. As you know, I've written several books. Several of them relate to parenting. This is the first one, and a lot of the things that I talked about today are in here. Who's raising Boone, and so on. The follow-up to that book is this one, coping with your adolescent. I like to say, if you haven't read this one, you're sure as heck going to need this one. Mm-hmm. So a book that I finished during COVID is this one, Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex. This, what every divorced parent needs to know. So these are my 3 books related to parenting. And of course, they're available on my website and of course at Amazon as well. I also speak to the community. And I speak to associations on various topics, parenting, marriage, divorce, things along those lines.
That's phenomenal. Hey, Dr. Waldman, I sure hope that this is definitely not the last conversation we have, because I think there's so much more I would love to pick your brain on, especially the divorced parent aspect, because I know a lot of, especially soldier or military folks, there's a high divorce rate, and so they're trying to just battle that out with raising their kids, but also dealing with their ex, and like the title of your book, right? Some of them, a lot of them hate their exes, and we're to the point where they're like, it interferes with how they raise their kids. And so I hope this is not the last time we talk. Hey guys, all of his stuff, his information will be in the description below. So I highly encourage you to check it out. Like any of the people that I talk to that are guests on the show, check them out, check out their websites. It's really informative. And I promise you guys, talking to these individuals is not just for, just for the heck of it. There's a purpose, right? I want to help you all. These individuals who I talk to, they have experiences that you may be dealing with currently or don't have that could help you or help someone that you know. And that's the biggest thing, is we have to help each other. It takes a village, as they would say, to raise kids. And so this task that we have decided to take on of raising a family or having a family, raising kids, can be difficult at times, but overall it's supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to enjoy it, and it's supposed to building memories to the point where you can sit back and you'd be like, wow, I remember when my kids were just this little. And it's very nostalgic, right? But there's a bigger purpose to it. I love my family. I love having kids. I want 4. We'll see what my wife says. She's the one who has to have the kids. So, but that being said, guys, Dr. Waldman, again, thank you for joining us. And of course, guys, if you're new here, please like and subscribe to the channel. Go check out our website, mediocredads.net. And if you are a returning viewer, we appreciate you. Share this with your friends. But of course, guys, as usual, being mediocre is a choice, and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. That's all I got. Mediocre Dads out.